So we're going to probably get started. Just to give everybody a little bit of overview of the sequence of events this evening. So this session today, right now at 5, is for mentors, or it's more of an information session for potential mentors or new mentors, and then that'll go to about 5:45, we hope, and then starting at 6, we'll bring out the food and beverages, and then around 6:30, we will have the mentors for the current cohort. We're launching 2 cohorts right now, so they'll come in. You're welcome to stay for those later sessions if you want, and thank you very much for coming. So without further ado, let me introduce Thane Krenner, who's the Executive Director of the Miller Center here. You got
Thanks,
the clicker?
Alex.
Okay.
I do, yeah. Welcome. Glad to have you guys all here. The first thing I want to say is thank you. That the work we do with social entrepreneurs, we can only do because of you guys and volunteering your time to help them scale their impact. So what I'm going to do now is give you guys a little bit of an overview of Miller Center. And then Jeff Miller should be here at 6, and we'll talk a little bit more about our business model, which is something we ask all the social entrepreneurs to do. So several of you have already asked me, what is Miller Center? How do you fit into Santa Clara University? And we're a center of distinction. And what that means is that we're an independent administrative unit, meaning we're not part of a school or a college. I report directly to the provost. What it means from a less bureaucratic point of view is that we operate a lot like an enterprise. We're responsible for raising our own funding, setting our own mission and our goals. But the purpose of all 3 centers of distinction at Santa Clara is to connect the outside world with the university and the university with the outside world. Okay, so that's what the centers of distinction do. The other 2 centers of distinction are the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics and the Ignatian Center for Jesuit Education. So our mission is to accelerate entrepreneurship, to end global poverty, and protect the planet. And that's very much aligned with the mission of Santa Clara University, which is a Jesuit university here in the heart of Silicon Valley. And if you've read Pope Francis's encyclical, Laudato Si, you'll see that he talks about the connection between poverty and climate change and the need for dignified employment. So that's really what drives us. This is what our mission is overall. We often ask the social entrepreneurs as they go through GSBI to describe the scale of the problem. So that's what I want to tell you about. And you guys have heard all of these numbers somewhere else. There's 4 billion poor people on the planet, okay? Living below $4 a day on average, because income doesn't come in predictable streams, or by definitions of their own governments. And living in this kind of poverty, this is a picture of an urban slum, it can be deathly. 29,000 children die every day, according to UNICEF, from conditions related to poverty. And 2 of the primary drivers are lack of access to safe drinking water. So there's about 1.1 billion people who don't have access to safe drinking water, and inadequate sanitation. More people on the planet have access to mobile phones than to toilets. There's 2.5 billion people who practice open defecation. And in urban areas like this, there's a hazard that locals refer to as flying toilets. Literally sacks of shit that people throw to get away from their own homes. And that's what happens to it. That spreads diseases, which is the major cause of death among young children. In rural areas, the fecal matter makes its way into the food supply through farms. And there's about 500 million small farms on the planet that produce 80% of the world's food. Most of these are run by smallholder farmers who are excluded from financial systems. And if you're excluded from financial systems, you can't invest in things that would improve your agricultural productivity, like fertilizer or simple drip irrigation, because you can't get credit, okay? And even if you could get credit and increase the food production, a lot of your food goes to waste because you can't invest in refrigeration, and if you could, there's no power to run it. So a lot of the food that's produced by smallholder farmers goes to waste. It never makes it to the market. There's 1.6 billion people who don't have electricity. They're off the grid, and another 1 billion people whose grid power is unreliable. They don't know if they're going to have it one day or the next. And so for lighting, which is the first and primary use of electricity, a lot of people resort to kerosene lanterns. Kerosene doesn't put out very much light. The lumen output is extremely low. It puts out a lot of fumes. It's equivalent to smoking about 2 packs of cigarettes a day, which contributes to more health-related conditions. And it costs about $2 a week. So it's, I think there's a timer on this. So it's contributing to health conditions. So not having energy, not having access to water, not having access to sanitation makes life very, very dangerous for the global poor. And that's what we're trying to address through social entrepreneurship. It's especially difficult if you're a woman. Poverty affects women a lot more than men. They're responsible for the food, the energy, the water, and health budgets of their households. And climate change is making all of those things harder and harder to come by. In Haiti, where this picture was taken, for example, the country is 98% deforested. So that means it's harder and harder to get wood to build a fire. Women buy charcoal, which can account for 60% of their daily spend just to cook your food, not even to buy it. Okay? Now, the question that I asked when I came to Miller Center 6 years ago is, why are these conditions of poverty so persistent? Haven't we been investing a lot of money in foreign aid, official development assistance is the term, and why hasn't that model worked? And the short answer is that whether it's aid or charity, that the model of giving to the poor does not empower them to take their own destinies in control. They don't have ownership of their own futures. They're reliant on governments, which are often corrupt. They're reliant on others to give to them, and it puts them in a different position. That model has not worked. There's lots of other issues. Debt Aid is a great book if you want to read it about problems with the aid paradigm. I'm not saying it's not important at all after natural disasters. There's definitely a role for development assistance to help people recover from tsunamis and other things that are increasing as a result of climate change, but it has not resulted in sustainable change in the communities around the planet that are affected by poverty. Social entrepreneurship is a very, very different model. Instead of charity, which is aid is basically a form of government-to-government charity, social entrepreneurship is focused on problem solving. It's focused on figuring out a solution that will work in the particular community. So it's also very community-based, and it's very, very often, in our experience, financially sustainable. This picture is of Solar Sister, a social enterprise based in East Africa. And what Solar Sister does is it equips women entrepreneurs to sell solar lanterns door to door. Now, everybody in that equation wins. The person who's buying the solar-powered lantern, which might cost $10 or $20 after 5 or 10 weeks, has paid back what they would have paid for kerosene. I told you it was $2 a week for kerosene. So after as short a payback period as 5 weeks, they're better off. They have $2 a week more that they can put in their pocket. And what do they do with that extra $2? So they send their girls to school as well as their boys. They add on to their homes. They invest in small enterprises like buying a chicken that lays eggs that they can sell. And we've been there and we've sent students there and followed up on what the impact of something as simple as a solar-powered lantern can have on a family in East Africa. There's enterprises like Solar Sister all over the world, Onergy in India, Ilumexico in Mexico, and Power Generation in Nepal that are doing very, very similar models. The women entrepreneurs who are selling these lanterns now have an income. They become the primary breadwinners in their families. And what happens when women are economically empowered is that they invest more in their families, they send the girls to school, they invest more in their communities, and everybody is better off. So you can see why there's a lot of leverage in working with women social entrepreneurs with solutions that promote climate resilience. Another example is Cantaro Azul. Cantaro Azul basically sets up safe drinking water franchises. I told you that there's 1.5 billion people on the planet who don't have access to safe drinking water. That contributes to diarrheal diseases that kill 29,000 children a day. And Cantaro Azul has a very simple model where women franchise owners produce safe drinking water. They distribute it in these communities. Same equation as I told you for off-grid energy. If people aren't getting sick, they don't have the opportunity cost of not being able to work, they don't have to pay for treatment for the conditions that they have, and the women are making money, they become the primary breadwinners in their communities. Very simple models. Again, just like Solar Sister, there are examples of safe drinking water enterprises all over the world. Djibu in East Africa, Cantaro Azul here in Latin America, Sarvajal in India, and we worked with many, many of them. So at the heart of everything we do is the social entrepreneur. And in a few minutes, Cassandra will tell you more about our GSBI programs, Global Social Benefit Institute, which is how we actually work with them. And as I said earlier, vital to how we work with them are the mentors. You guys accompany the social entrepreneurs through a structured curriculum that helps them figure out how to scale their impact, helps them become investment ready. Once they're investment ready, one of the things that we try to do is connect them with impact investors who have the appropriate form of capital for that kind of business. It might be equity, it might be a loan, it might be grant, it could be any form of capital, and we've come up with some other innovations there. And then we engage Santa Clara University students in what we call action research with the social enterprises, where during the summer between their junior and senior years, they go and they help the social entrepreneurs with things that most social enterprises are not equipped to do. It might be documentation of operating procedures so that they can scale sales training. It might be creating marketing videos. It might be measurement and evaluation of impact. And these projects are starting to help the social entrepreneurs get more and more investment. So that's kind of what we do overall. Cassandra is going to talk more about this, but I think it's an important slide for me to spend just a minute on. What we ask all the social entrepreneurs to start with is the impact model. And that's how we really define a social enterprise or an impact investor. What's your intention? It's to create impact. What kind of impact? What's the model for impact? And what's the theory of change? We then work with them, and this is where all of you come in as mentors, on the business model. How do you support that impact model? How do you make it operationally efficient? As you scale, you create efficiencies for growth, just like many of us have done here in Silicon Valley, and you have a justifiable ask. If you give me, as a donor, if you give me $500,000, if you invest in me $250,000 in a convertible debt, whatever it is, this is the impact that I'm going to create. That's what we call a justifiable ask. So Cassandra will talk more about that. So this is just an overview of where we are and kind of what we call theory of change or logical framework. Miller Center has a number of programs. The GSBF, that's short for the Global Social Benefit Fellowship. That's how we engage the students in the social enterprises. And then we have a series of GSBI programs. Accelerator and Online are the ones that we actually mentor and run regular cohorts a year, but there's other ones we can tell you more about later. And then we have a series of experiments that we're doing with corporations, with USAID, and with individual donors to figure out other ways to help social enterprises scale. Okay? So that's what we do. That's the activities, the programs, the inputs. The outputs, we've worked with about 75 student fellows. This is the 5th year of the fellowship. About 610 social enterprises from 65 countries around the world. Okay? So these are what we call our KPIs, or key performance indicators. The outcome, we said we're trying to get the social enterprises investment ready with a justifiable ask. How do we know if we've been successful? They've raised money. So the outcome is they've raised about these 610 social enterprises have raised about $320 million, okay? That's pretty significant in the social enterprise sector. Might not sound like a lot compared to Tesla or Facebook, but it's a lot in the social enterprise sector. And then their collective impact, with a huge caveat that there's all kinds of different impact and you can't compare them to each other. Safe drinking water, electricity, apples and oranges, but then you throw in things like sanitary pads and education. It's very hard to compare them to each other. But this is an aggregate number reported by the social enterprises, 230 million lives impacted by these 610 social enterprises. So we're pretty proud of that. We want to scale up more. That's why you guys are all here. That's why we keep adding more social entrepreneurs to our output column here, and we keep thinking of ways to help the ones that we've worked with have even greater impact. So I'm going to turn it over to Cassandra now, and she's going to tell you more about the GSBI programs, how they work, and how you guys make the magic happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Cassandra Staff. I'm the COO here at Miller Center. I've been here since 2010 when I got my MBA in the program and was forced to take a one-unit course. And half the day was ethics and business, and half a day was on social entrepreneurship. And it changed my life, and I'm still here. So I hope that perhaps this is a day like that for you as well. So moving on. So when I joined, we had one flagship program called the Global Social Benefit Incubator, and we worked with up to 20 entrepreneurs per year. And that was really what we focused on. Right around that same time, we were realizing that incubators and accelerators were springing up all over the place. In addition, as the whole field evolved, social entrepreneurs and their needs became more and more nuanced, especially as we were experiencing more mature organizations that needed a different type of support. So what we did was we took our programming and we split it up into a couple different programs so that we can target the curriculum and the content and the services that we're offering to the unique needs of the entrepreneur in their particular development life cycle. So what you see here is this model called From Blueprint to Scale, and this is essentially the framework that we've tied on to because there's a lot of terminology to sort of describe an entrepreneur's growth. But this is what we use here, and you can see below that are 3 different programs that we run. These are not all of the programs that we run, but sort of the main ones that we run on a regular basis. The main differences are the stage of development of the entrepreneur that they support and the format. So we have online training and we have in-person training. And for Boost, we're doing that in person, 3 days for very early stage SEs to really introduce the concepts, and in 3 days, get them to articulate an executive summary, a clear business model and ask. For GSBI Online, we're taking them through an all online program over the course of 6 months, and their outputs are a lot more developed. It's a more developed business plan deck, a lot clearer indicators. And for GSBI Accelerator, that's both online and in-person training for organizations that we're really trying to prepare to scale. So they've established their impact model, their business model. Now they're really looking into digging into the gaps that are going to prevent them from getting to that next level of scale. Persistent through all of these programs is the executive mentorship that really differentiates GSBI and Miller Center from all of the other programs out there, because we are the only one based in Silicon Valley and can draw on the resources of very, very experienced businessmen and women who have fundraised, have grown teams, have dealt with difficult boards, who have tested and tried different business models and learned how to acquire new customers. So that's really, the key value proposition that we're able to offer the entrepreneurs, and that's reflected in all of the programming that we do. We also have a couple other initiatives which Thane referenced that are not reflected on here, and that sort of ties into helping entrepreneurs scale. So Rob here is working with us on some work on replication and taking businesses that have established a successful model and then applying those into regions where there's a similar need, an interested entrepreneur. And we're doing a lot more to really examine what we can do on the front end in terms of helping early stage entrepreneurs blueprint. Because at the moment, we're only working with entrepreneurs that have a business and that are operational. We do targeted support based on how developed they are, but what's important is that they have a business and it's not an idea. So we're not really focused on kind of the ideation, the prototyping, that sort of thing. It's more so, okay, do you have data we can work with? Have you worked in the market? Do you understand the customers more? Okay, now we've got more inputs that we can really start building credible financials and projections off of. So this is kind of what that's outlining there. And this is to show you sort of our plan for this year. Last year we ran 3 online cohorts and 1 accelerator cohort, and the plan for 2017 is to run 4 online cohorts and 1 accelerator cohort. So that's about 75 to 100 entrepreneurs that we expect to train this year through just GSBI Online and GSBI Accelerator. So we need more mentors, and so that's what we're here to talk about. For all of our programs, we tend to do 2 mentors per entrepreneur, so that really offers some support between the mentors who are supporting the entrepreneur and a range of experience that are being offered to the entrepreneurs. What we try to do is, someone with general management experience and then perhaps someone with more technical expertise on the areas that the entrepreneurs have outlined as unique needs of theirs, whether it be marketing or finance or something else. So that's essentially the plan for this year. And we cut down my slides, but just to point to Thane's mention that I would be talking about right here. So the curriculum is another really key differentiating factor for us. We're not using sort of standard off-the-shelf content. We're not using standard off-the-shelf entrepreneurship training content. It's really something that has evolved from input from the entrepreneurs, from feedback from the mentors over the last 14, 15 years. And Andy here leads sort of the integration of that and the rollout of that content into all of our programs. And the work that we do to really beef up stuff for the accelerator and our more advanced entrepreneurs finds its way into online and Boost. And so it really is this nice cycle that lends itself to innovations in all of our programs. But this is really the model that we're basing all of the curriculum off of. It's developing an integrated impact model and a business model for the entrepreneur so that when they scale and every time they increase their impact, they're also increasing their revenue and vice versa. And it's really bringing in efficiencies for the entrepreneurs to scale their operations in a sustainable way and to help them articulate their unique offering to impact investors in a way that's compelling and justified.
Quick question. Could we read a review regarding the KPIs? That's a statement of what has been done. Do you have a target in mind for this year? Yes.
No, you please.
We do have targets. So what we've done, and I don't know if anyone has the numbers right on them, but what we've done is create what we call a 3-year execution plan, the same thing that we talk to the entrepreneurs about. We're doing operations reviews, which Cassandra, as COO, leads, and we have target KPIs for the next 3 fiscal years. What it ends up being, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers here, but by the end of 2018-19, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So June 30th, 2019, this is 1,900. Social enterprises, this is 788 million raised. Pamela's nodding yes, so I'm doing pretty well here. And this is 446 million lives impacted. And I get to retire when it gets to $1 billion. Or maybe 2.
Okay, great. So that's me. I look forward to connecting with you after and take any questions you have. Hand it back to Alex.
Thanks, Cassandra. So I know a couple of folks came in late. Just refresh your memory. I'm Alex Limberis. I literally just joined. I've been mentoring for about 3 years at the center here, and I just took a staff position literally a few weeks ago at the beginning of the year. So the sequence of events tonight is this is the mentor information session, which will finish up probably about 15 minutes. Then we'll have networking, and then at starting around 6:30, we'll have a session for the new mentor cohort. You're welcome to stay, network, etc. So let's talk a little bit about what we look for in mentors. So we have a series, we separate them out into a couple different categories. The lead mentors tend to have done this a few times already. I'm honored enough now to be considered a lead mentor. And usually it's somebody who's got general management experience, multiple disciplines. Maybe you've done marketing, maybe you've done sales, even like myself came up through the engineering ranks. The co-mentor would usually have also deep mentor experience, but might be a little bit more specialized. And then the associate mentors are typically more junior, but might have domain experience in a particular area. So for example, maybe product marketing, finance is always something that we have a need for, operations, sales, where you might have distribution channels and things like that. In addition to this, we have what we call mentor in training. So as you come on board, we'll bring you in and we'll pair you with a more experienced mentor. You go through the program, and that is your learning process about our process. And so we found that this works pretty effectively. I think almost everybody that I recognize here is very, very experienced, so I think you would all be a huge asset to the program. The other part of it is, in addition to your business acumen, your business experience, it's really what comes more from the heart, more from what your person is. And we really want folks who are care about the mission that we're on, care about humanity, care and humble and humility, respectful. A lot of these social enterprises that you're dealing with, they're, a lot of them, as you work with them, they are somewhat often in awe about us. We're from Silicon Valley, they're in Ghana. So you need to be humble and respectful and understand their framework and where they're coming from. It's hard for us to imagine a lot of times what's happening. It starts raining, their internet connection goes down. It's just a very different world that we live in than they live in. So it's really important that you relate to what they're doing. I want you to be engaged and an active listener and a trusted advisor too. Because sometimes it's important to be able to push them to the next level that they need to do, but do it in a sense of humility and a sense of challenging them from the soul. This list here is a lot of the qualities that we look for. This is a summary of basically what I said. The other thing is be very pragmatic too. This is something especially, a lot of these entrepreneurs are dealing with sort of very basic blocking and tackling challenges. One of the companies I'm working with right now, one of their biggest challenges is just currency conversion. Being able to convert currency from the local currency to actually euros in this case, so that they can pay one of the suppliers. So these are the kinds of challenges that we don't think about that much, and just be able to listen and relate to their problems. I think inspiring is a really important one too. Inspire them. Remember, tell them what they're doing, what the greatness is, what the mission they're doing is really super important. So I'll give you a couple examples of some what we would say are associate entrepreneurs, and these are folks who have sort of domain experience in a couple of areas. So, this comes from more the management and engineering side, Elena. And then Eric is one of our mentors who's really more in the finance area. We're trying to experiment a little bit with this right now to see if we can get the finance mentors to maybe help multiple companies. I think that's something that we're trying to explore to see if that works. Then we have a series of folks who have been with the program for a long time, and not only are they our sort of most senior mentors, but they provide a lot of the content for the program as well. And so as we hope that you guys become involved and grow into the program, not only will you be a mentor, but you'll be able to make the program better, provide content to the program, and help us grow as human beings in the program. Lastly, a couple of things is we really focus on, number one, the impact model. So figuring out what the impact is going to be and then build the business model around the supporting of that. And as Thane said earlier, what gets me so excited about this is we enable folks to become sustainable, so they don't have to be handing the hat around every quarter to fund their next program. If they can build up to become a sustainable business that has a high impact, that's going to long-term create a much better world that we all can benefit in. And so here's an example of some of the online deliverables that we do. And it goes through, you'll go through these in the series of modules that you work with the entrepreneurs on. So it builds up to ultimately, which is building out their justifiable ask. So putting together, and this would be a very familiar to everybody that here, where you do your 10 or 12 slides. It's sort of the basic. The one thing that's really different that you would see in a social enterprise slide deck versus a sort of a more generic Silicon Valley is there's going to be a section in your business plan that talks about the impact and the impact metrics. And everything else in that business plan is going to support those impacts and the impact metrics, where you might not see that in your more typical Silicon Valley business plan. So talking about the mentoring process and the timing. So there's the modules. The modules are sort of running on approximately a 3-week time click. What we'd like to say is to schedule a meeting with your social entrepreneur, have a regularly scheduled meeting once a week. The good news is you can do these usually in the morning or in the evenings because they tend to be 10, 12 hours apart from us, so you can figure out. And I found that sometimes you can even oscillate depending on what works better. Sometimes you could do your morning, sometimes your evening, and vice versa with them. Basically, they'll work through the content material themselves. They'll produce the deliverables for that, and then start to review it with you and iterate on that, and then you move on to the next module. Like I said, it's about 3 weeks. For your personal time frame, I would say figure about an hour to 2 hours per week. It's going to be a little bit more as you're new to the program, but as you become more familiar with the material, you might not have to do as much pre-prep as you would do as you're first going through this. But I think if you can allocate 2 hours a week of your time, that should be more than enough. So probably more like an hour and a half. So then you go through it, and then you approve that module, and then we keep a dashboard of that as well. So here's the Accelerator. It's very similar to the online, excepting the stage that the companies are in is a little bit different. So the way I look at this as a Silicon Valley guy, the online, they're looking for maybe a Series A or even a seed round. The Accelerator programs are more looking for growth stage, Series B, type thing. So they've got they have a pretty good sense of their unit economics. They have a pretty good sense of the value chain, the proposition, and what they're really looking to do is how do we bring that up and get it to scale. So it's really the growth stage part of it. They're going to have different needs. They're going to have to start figuring out more of the HR functions. They're going to have to start figuring out their capital requirements and things like that. So again, and then the other part of this is we get them ready for due diligence. So we have a whole package of materials that we create for them that they work together with them for the diligence. The other parts of this are the sustainable business model, the scaling, the management team development. So sort of stuff you would see as a company goes from maybe 10 people to 40, 50, 100 people, depending on that. And then lastly, the types of capital, whether they're looking for grants, whether they're looking for equity, convertible debt. There's a couple of other investment vehicles that our fellow John Culler has developed on this, which are more suitable for these types of markets. It's beyond my core competency to discuss those right now. But basically, figuring out what's the appropriate type of capital for them and then helping them get ready for that. So the next steps. So the program is we will meet with you ascertain your appropriate fitness for the program, participate in ad hoc events. Here's one of them tonight. And then, as I mentioned, so to participate as a mentor in training through one of the cohorts, and then you'll either mentor online as a co-mentor, and then eventually as a lead mentor. So hopefully, within a year and a half, you would be a lead mentor, and then have you bring on the other mentors behind you. So we have a ton of content to help. We have a reading list, formal training sessions, which we'll have one tonight. There's a handbook, a mentor handbook, and then the whole onboarding process that I spoke about a little bit. Here's an example of some of the reading material that we have, and we will help you get access to this content. I'll let you read that for a second. Yeah, we have access to these, yes? No? Okay, yeah. So then we're doing these twice per year right now. This is the one which is prior to one of the online. Because of the fact that we're now going to be doing 4 cohorts a year, we might want to think about adding another one, I think. Yeah. So, but right now the official story is we do 2 of these and then 1 before the in-residence program. So for the Accelerator program, that kicks off now and concludes in August, where the social entrepreneurs come on campus to do their final work. And that's a great experience. It's about 10 days here on campus. All the social entrepreneurs are here. A lot of the mentors are here working with them. And you get that real cohort kind of experience that is so helpful. But they, and often end up learning. Yep.
So in the previous slide, you're talking about training. As a mentor, would you glance through some of the online material to kind of be on the same page that he?
Yeah, so what I did myself is I would, as we're going through the modules, I would review the modules myself first. I would go through the videos. I would go through the slide materials. There's also the mentor handbook, which is really helpful. But basically, and that's why I'm saying at the beginning it takes a little bit more time, because you basically had to go through that material yourself to begin with. For myself personally, I found it really helpful in my other parts of my career because, I have an MBA, but it's been quite a while since I've done that, and it's almost like a constant refresher course that keeps you fresh on this material. So I find that really helpful for myself. Yep. So here's the program overview, and this is how we bring in this is the process to bring in the final cohorts. So we start out with about 300 applicants complete the applications, and then there's a series of different filtering events that finally leads to the approximate 20 in each of the cohorts. We don't always fill the 20 because we want to make sure that the quality is there and that's a good fit for everybody's time, but that's the goal. So this is some of the selection criteria that we use. The depth and breadth of their social impact is probably the most important. And the viability of the business model. Because of the fact that we're social entrepreneurs and a social business, you can have a great social impact, but if you don't have a business model that can support and sustain that, this is probably not, that doesn't mean that you're not valuable or not doing stuff, but you probably should be looking at more of the grant or more charity type programs rather than this. And then we select out, as I mentioned earlier, the online tends to be more the earlier stage, Series A as I kind of call it, and then the Accelerator is more the growth stage capital. Quality of the social entrepreneur, and then just more importantly, just what they need and what the social entrepreneur need mapped to what we do. Then when we go through the process of pairing the mentors with the social enterprises, and this is a combination, so we will We will ask the social entrepreneur what things they feel that they're lacking, that they benefit most, and we try to match the skill set of the mentors with the skill set of the social entrepreneurs. We'll also ask the mentors to take a look at the particular companies and ask them which company they think that they could add the most value to. And there's a combination of that we will pair. And we will try to find a co-mentor who has some sort of connection with this particular area of expertise. So you have the general manager type level and then the co-mentor. So one thing I wanted to say here, and let's talk a little bit about myself. I've been fortunate to have been through 8 startups, and as I said to Thane, my 8th and final startup was last year where we had a private equity event. And I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to do many other startups. And for myself, my last startup was doing digital magazines, so I was making the world a much better place for advertisers so that we can sell people stuff they didn't necessarily need. And I thought about what I wanted to do personally, and what really attracts me to this is I can use the skills that I've developed over a relatively long career and apply it to something that's really impactful, really important, at a lot less income. But and I thought about this line that Steve Jobs said. Does everybody know this line that Steve Jobs said to John Sculley when he was recruiting him? So John Sculley was the CEO of PepsiCo. And so Steve famously says to John, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come work with me and change the world? And I would say, yes, Apple's changed the world in many ways, but we're really changing the world here. We're changing the world in a much more fundamental core. And I'm not saying that what you're doing in your day gigs is equivalent to selling sugar water, but for myself is, to take those couple of hours a week of your time and really come work with us and help change the world. So that's our story, and we are right on schedule. Questions? Yep.
Do the companies that accepted pay for?
No, they do not. No. No, the only pay they have to do is airfare for for them to come on campus. That's the only thing. We pay for everything else. And then so we even cover the room and board while they're here. It's just the airfare that they have to cover. Is that right, Cassandra? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yep.
So what's the process for selecting and onboarding the mentors? And what's the time frame for start?
I know most of you folks already, so I would say you've already filtered the character filter there. But so we're basically for these cohorts that are starting right now, we're essentially done. The mentors are paired. We have another cohort starting in April, and so that would probably be your first opportunity. Although we could maybe tag on an extra mentor with the current cohort, if that makes sense, if you wanted to do, I have to think about that, but if you wanted to sort of tag along. Joel's actually, you're assigned with the company, this cohort, right? Yeah, so that's basically the timing. So figure April would be the next one. Other questions?
How do the entrepreneurs find this program?
That's a good question. Cassandra?
Just to make sure we pick it up on the camera. So they come to us from a number of ways. We do a lot of recruiting through our alumni base. So they tend to tell the other entrepreneurs that they meet in the field that they work with. So from the network of 600 or so alumni, we tend to get a lot of referrals from folks that know us well, and then know which of their colleagues would benefit. We also work with Ashoka, with Echoing Green, with Unreasonable Institute, and other organizations in this space, and they market for us or with us, and we do the same for them. So we're sharing channels there. And then several of us are also traveling quite a bit, going to conferences on social entrepreneurship, Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, and SOCAP. And yeah, our chief innovation / chief travel officer is back there. And so we're constantly meeting these folks and talking to them about it. So that tends to be how they find us.
Anything else? We're good back there? We're ready to go. So please help yourself to some adult beverages, some food, and you're welcome to stick around for the next session, which will start at probably about 6:15 or so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.